Hello everyone. So I want to make this video to discuss the meaning of life. Now I know that seems big, but actually is not. So what is the meaning of life? I mean, this is a question that people ask all the time. What is the meaning of life? Why are we here and blah, 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 blah. Now the answer is not going to be as satisfying as maybe someone expect, but it's probably going to be useful. So let's look specifically at the question, what is the meaning of life? So it implies that life, which is a concept, is something, I mean, we know what life is. It's the ability of certain creatures to live and reproduce, etc. We have a rough idea of what life is. Now, what does meaning means? What is the meaning of means? Well, usually the word meaning originally is used for a symbol. So something which is a symbol represents something else. So let's say, for example, the word cat, C-A-T, represents a cat. Makes sense? So the meaning of the word cat is a cat. Or the meaning of the letter A is the sound A. It's a symbol. So when you're talking about symbols, it makes perfect sense to ask a question about what the meaning is. What is the meaning of this symbol? But meaning makes sense only for symbols. So what is the meaning of the word cat? You can say a cat. But what if you say, what is the meaning of a cat? It doesn't really make sense because a cat is not a symbol, it's a living being. Now, of course, one could still ask the question, but the answer would be kind of superstition. So it's like, what is the meaning of a cat? And someone could say, well, it depends. If it's black, it's bad luck. If it's white, it's good luck. And if it's mixed, it's like whatever, it's mixed. It's like there is this, I think well, not anymore, but I think during Middle Age Europe, this idea that black cats bring bad luck. So it's a superstition. It's when people try to search meaning in things that are not symbols. So of course symbols have meaning. I mean, the letter A represents a sound and the word cat represents an animal. But what is the meaning of a cat? There is no meaning. But if you try to insist that there must be a meaning, then you end up with superstition. Well, so if the cat is like this, then if the cat has babies, it brings good luck. If the cat is black, it brings bad luck. If the cat is, I don't know, is doing meow, it means this. I mean, besides that, in this case, it could really mean something, because if the cat is doing meow, maybe he wants to ask you something like food or whatever. So in this case, it's a sound that may very well have a meaning. So things that are symbols have a meaning. Things that are not symbols don't have a meaning. So the question seemed kind of interesting, and it seems to, it's kind of those very generic words that people say, like, I don't know, like stuff like, you know, love is everything, or the answer is in the absolute, like bullshit, empty words. So they kind of sound interesting because they're just so ambiguous and confusing that they kind of unconsciously feel interesting. But in reality, they are not interesting. There is nothing interesting in it. So when someone says, what is the meaning of life? It's not really interesting because life is not a symbol. It's like saying, what is the meaning of a cat? So this is the short answer. The question is incorrect. Or it's like if you ask why, for example, why it rains. Well, again, it depends, because there are two ways to answer the question. There is a correct way for why, which is to just go back in the past and try to identify the cause. And there is an incorrect way to try to identify the purpose. So if you say, for example, it rains so that we can have fresh water, of course it's a stupid answer, because there was rain before humans existed. It's not that rain appeared to serve humans that did not even exist yet. Humans co-evolved with rain. So again, the answer why only makes sense if you're looking what was there before in terms of time, and not if you look at it from a perspective of purpose. Of course, unless it's an individual doing something. So why are you doing this? And you can state your purpose. But then it's only if it is the action of an individual that has an intention. You cannot say why it rains and assume there is a purpose. There is no purpose, because the earth is not some person that is thinking and planning, etc., etc., etc. So, of course, for an individual, you can ask why he's doing something, because he may very well have a plan about why he's doing that thing, and then you may want to know why he's doing that thing just to understand his motivation. So for an individual, for the action that derives from an individual, you can ask the question why. But for a natural phenomena, the question, and it could be, sorry, for an individual, you can ask the question why, and the answer could be something in the future. It could be a purpose, for the purpose of. But if you are looking at a natural phenomena and you ask the question why, then you can only look in the past. You can try to explain by looking in the past. So for example, if someone say, I don't know, why the Big Bang? I mean, I'm not a scientist, so maybe it's oversimplified what I'm saying, but I just want to make a point. So the belief is that time and space start with the Big Bang. So it's not that there was already time, there was already space, and the Big Bang appears. So if time starts with the Big Bang, then you cannot really ask the question why the Big Bang, because, and again, I'm not sure I'm completely accurate about this, it's just an example. But in theory, if there is nothing before the Big Bang, because time did not exist, you cannot answer the question why. Because if that's the initial state, if time starts to exist with the Big Bang, you cannot ask what was before, because why, unless of course it's about an individual, so an individual making a specific action, and you ask him what is your intention. So of course, because why it's kind of a confusing word, because it can at the same time mean intention or past cause. So of course, for individual, when you ask why, both are valid. So someone can say why and answer with the past cause, or why and answer with the purpose, with the intention. For a natural phenomena, you can only look at the past cause. But if this is the first thing ever and time did not exist before, there is no past cause. So if you say, why is there the Big Bang? Clearly, you're not talking about intention. The Big Bang doesn't have intention. You're talking about what was there before. But there is no before the Big Bang, because it creates time itself, so it seems. So even the question why the Big Bang doesn't make sense, because you're effectively asking what was there before the Big Bang. But maybe there was, I mean, it seems that science agrees that there was no time before the Big Bang, so the question doesn't make sense. So we often have questions that they make sense, and that the answer is just very difficult, but it's just because the question doesn't make sense. So what is the meaning of life? It's a question that doesn't make sense, because life is not a symbol, so it doesn't have a meaning. A meaning is just a symbol. It's just the connection between a fact and a symbol. And also, the why question is dangerous. So for an individual, you can ask the why question and someone can provide you as an answer an intention or a cause. For natural phenomena, it can only be a cause. And for certain natural phenomena like the Big Bang, which is the beginning of time, you cannot even ask the why question in terms of cause, because there is nothing before the Big Bang. So what was before, why the Big Bang happened? If to answer this question, this why, you have to go before the Big Bang and see what was the cause of the Big Bang, but there was no time, you cannot answer that question. So does that mean that then life is meaningless? Well, again, it depends what you mean by meaningless. So if by meaningless you mean that it's not a symbol, then yes, life is not a symbol that represents something else. So if we want to see it like this, then we can say it's meaningless. But then probably when we ask the question if life is meaningful or meaningless, I don't think we have in mind the idea of is it a symbol or not. So if it's not a symbol, it's meaningless. If it's a symbol, it's meaningful, because of course it's not a symbol. But the answer is probably a little bit deeper than that. So what do we mean? What are we actually thinking about when we ask ourselves if life has a meaning or if it's meaningless? So I will say that now that we looked at the simplified answer, let's say that it has no meaning in the sense that it's not a symbol, we can look at a more deep answer. And the deep answer is more related to a kind of expectation. So it's like, in a broader sense, what could meaning mean? So I will argue that if we try to extend as much as we can the meaning, the significance, the interpretation of the word meaning, it's really about if something is going to carry over in the future. So let's say someone is playing Monopoly, maybe the kids are playing Monopoly, the parents could say, stop playing this meaningless game. But if they are playing poker with real money, maybe they will not say, stop playing this meaningless game. They will say, stop wasting your money. Because there is an understanding that the game of Monopoly, the consequences of the game of Monopoly do not carry over after the game. So once you're done playing with the game, you are done. So anything that happened during the game does not affect anything outside the game. So whatever happens during the game is meaningless for the reality outside the game. But when you play poker, what happens during the game is relevant to what also happened outside of the game. Because if you won money in poker and you were playing real money, you get to keep the money. If you won money in Monopoly, you don't get to keep it. So I think there is this idea of, does it make sense, in the sense that does something carries over? And of course this depends. So it's like we say, does school make sense? Well, yes, because it kind of carries over to university. Does university make sense? Well, yes, in the sense that it carries over to our job. And does our job make sense? Well, yes, because it determines if we can earn money to pay the rent and the food, etc., which affect us. And then does our job matter eventually when we age? And yes, potentially we can have a retirement or not, etc. But then of course at some point we die. And so here is the question where that maybe is another way of looking at it. So, but I think the goal here is to try to make the question more clear so that the answer can be obvious. So someone say, does life has a meaning? Let's say, so if the day before you die, you ask, did it all have a meaning? Well, no, in the sense that it's not a symbol for something else. But then the question could be, does something carry over? And this we don't know. So, but it's just that because we don't know if anything is going to carry over or not. So some people believe that yes, something will carry over, and some people believe that no, nothing will carry over. So of course, but it's a much simpler question. It's not the meaning, because the meaning is such a vague word that it could mean everything and nothing. It could mean that maybe there is a correct meaning, a wrong meaning. It's like, it's very confusing. It's one of those words that is very confusing. So that's why I wanted to approach first by looking at the specific, let's say the more natural interpretation, which is meaning is just when a symbol represents something else that is not a symbol, like the word cat. Like the word cat represents a cat. We also have the case where we are kind of a little bit abusing the word, extending the word, and it's not really about if it's a symbol or not and whatever. It's more about if something carries over. So the game of Monopoly, does it mean something? It doesn't, because nothing carries over. After the game of Monopoly, nothing carries over. Whereas in the game of poker, the money that you gain while playing the game, it does carry over. You get to keep it. And so of course, if we intend life as, let's say, from when we are born to when we are dead, because again, life is also a confusing word, because it could be life in general, the life of all animals and all creatures, or it could be the duration of our life. It depends what the question is. So, and again, of course, there is no answer. I don't pretend to have some magical answer. I just want to show that the question doesn't make sense, because it actually adds, I believe, a lot of clarity to show that the question doesn't make sense. If intended as meaning for a symbol, and if it's intended as does something carry over, then the answer is we don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. But that's a much clearer question. So it will not confuse our mind that we will start to look in a million directions what could be this kind of secret meaning. Now the answer is kind of obvious. So it's like there is no meaning in the classical sense because it's not a symbol. And if by meaning we mean does something carry over, the answer is we don't know. But no one knows, so it's not that the answer is going to be found by thinking or reading philosophy books or whatever. It's just that no one knows. It's like if there is a box and it's closed and I say, can you guess what is in the box? The answer is no, you cannot. So we don't know. Maybe something carries over, maybe not. But I believe it's pointless to try to enter into this maze where we try to wonder, because the questions which contain undefined words are very dangerous, because as we think about it, we get confused by the extreme ambiguity of the word. So it's like if I say, for example, I don't know, is truth absolute? Well, first of all, what does truth means? Because it's a super generic word. And what does absolute mean? So a question like this is just confusing. It's not going to lead to anything useful. Now, of course, we can rephrase it to simpler words, less ambiguous words. And this is usually very effective. So when you have a question that contains words that feel ambiguous and confusing, and it feels like a big, deep, mystical question, the best thing to do is to retranslate the question in much more precise words. So just like meaning, we can say, okay, so meaning, it can be intended as a symbol representing something, or it can be intended as does something carry over. So better to ask the precise question, to say, is life a symbol? It's not. Does life carry over after we die? We don't know. And problem solved. There is no need to keep thinking about it, because it's just that the premise, that the question, that the words were confusing. So if I say, for example, what is absolute truth, or is there anything as absolute truth? Well, what does truth mean? Because truth is also an idea, it's a concept, it's a story. I mean, there is reality, and there is what we know of reality. So we could argue that truth is maybe a simplification of reality. It's like a map of reality. So you could say that, let's say, for example, I don't know, there is a cat sitting on the couch. And I say the truth is there is a cat sitting on the couch. Okay, I mean, I simplified reality. The reality has more detail, because there is the color of the cat, the size of the cat, the weight of the cat, like the age of the cat, and the position of every single atom in the cat. That's reality. Reality is incredibly detailed. Now, if I say there is a cat on the couch and there is actually a cat, then yeah, I'm saying the truth. That is, I'm basically describing reality correctly. That will be truth. Truth is, so there is reality, let's say a bunch of atoms that form a cat sitting on the couch, that's reality. And then me describing that reality in a simplified way, that is, I'm not describing the position of every single atom, I'm simplifying. I'm saying there is a cat on the couch, that's the truth. And it's probably true in the sense that if there actually is a cat on the couch, then yes, it's the truth. There is a cat on the couch. But then what does truth mean? Truth means a simplified map of reality. So the reality is highly complex. There is this specific cat with all those characteristics, but I'm oversimplifying it to cat. So yes, that animal that is sitting there belongs to the group of cats. So I'm saying there is a cat sitting on the couch, and that's the truth. But it doesn't have any sort of mystical significance. It's just a description of reality. So there is reality, there is this bunch of atoms that is a cat on the couch, and I'm stating it in a simplified way by one sentence, saying there is a cat on the couch, and that's the truth. But it's just description of reality. So truth, we can now, because truth is such a big word, so let's translate it to something simpler. Truth as correctly describing reality. Now, what is absolute? Absolute will be, I guess, everything you can, I guess it will mean everything. So I think the question was, what is the absolute truth? Or I mean, is there an absolute truth, or whatever? I don't even remember the question, but it doesn't matter. So I was mixing like absolute and truth here. So the truth is a description of reality. It's always going to be a simplification, and absolute will mean everything. So now probably you cannot, I will suspect, summarize everything. It doesn't make sense. There's just too much data. So you could say, or you could say the universe exists. Sure, that could be an absolute truth, but not because there is anything magical in it. It's like you can say the universe exists in the sense that, I mean, so the truth part of the universe exists is that, of course, it does, and because let's say the absolute is the universe, so you describe everything. So if you say the cat is on the couch, it's not the absolute truth. You are missing the house, the city, the planet, the galaxy. You're just talking about the cat. So it's not everything. But you see how those words can be confusing, or the word absolute or the word truth can be so confusing because they are so ambiguous. So it's better to replace them with something much more specific. So to say truth just means accurately describing reality, and absolute means everything. Can you accurately describe everything? Probably not, because there is just too much, unless you want to make a simple statement like the universe exists. But as soon as you want to go more into detail, you probably cannot describe everything because there is just too much to describe. So then we could say then it doesn't exist. But I hope you guys can see that it's not really about answering the question. It's about understanding that the question is wrong, or the question is confusing, or the question is ambiguous. Often those big questions, they are very poor questions. They have no answer and they seem like big deals, but only really because they are improperly phrased questions. The wrong words are being used so that it's confusing and it's ambiguous and it's problematic.